Good morning. Oh, Amy, cheers. Oh, you're muted, so I can't hear you, but I'm sure you're saying lovely things about the Penzi Spice mug.
I am. I was saying there's days when I cling to this mug.
Yes. Same.
Choose love, Catherine.
Yes, Amy and I are twinning with our mugs today.
Oh, where did you get them from?
Penzi Spices.
What's NZ Spices?
Penzi, it's
Oh.
Penzey. Really good spices and very politically active liberal company.
You would like them. They are very feisty.
They
and
are.
They're a very good Wisconsin company that I used to live across the street from one of the stores, and I was addicted to going in and just smelling all the spices. And
My
then they
mom
got
is
even
probably
better.
lucky I don't live near one.
Oh, you should see my cabinet. It's just out of control, Penzi spices. It's really out of control.
So you were a spice creeper.
Mm-hmm.
Just sniffing around,
Yep.
making the staff uncomfortable.
Nope.
Oh.
No, because everybody does that.
Thank you for coming to our meeting today. Here, I'm gonna turn off the recording for a second. Well, it's just the two of you. Actually, I don't
Okay.
think I can. Ash, could you turn off the recording for a second?
If I knew how, I would.
Oh.
I will make you host so you can take over.
Yay. Usually it's a button up top. Oh, what do you mean? And let's see, I think with the three of you, we already have,
I think we have a quorum.
I think that we have a quorum because there's
All
four,
right.
right? Although, wait a second. You know what? We have a quorum. I'm just going to say it. If anyone wants to fight it later, we're not actually going to be making any decisions other than the minutes. So if somebody wants to send us to quorum jail because we approve minutes,
Well, we'll
Yeah.
just have it. We'll just won't have to do minutes for this meeting if it turns out we don't have a quorum.
there we go.
We're just a small discussion group.
Yeah.
So we'll call the meeting to order of the governance committee. Are there any adjustments to the agenda? The only adjustment I would suggest is moving the charter discussion right up first and just jumping right into that so that we can move right through that because Clayton has a stop for 9.
Okay.
Catherine, I love that idea. Being flexible. We don't have to follow the routine.
No. You can make it up as we go. You just need to sound confident while you do it.
And I just realized that we had some folks in the waiting room.
Oh,
When I went to minimize the waiting room to talk to you all, it didn't pop up when other folks joined. So we have, welcome Dan, welcome Paul.
Morning.
we've just called the meeting to order and we've just adjusted the agenda by reordering and moving the charter discussion up first. And so we're going to jump right into that. As you all probably know, if any changes were to happen to GMT service area, the charter would need to be adjusted. And VTrans has presented a proposal to the legislature for adjusting GMT's charter, which we have not seen nor reviewed as a board. So I suggested to Clayton that we at least have a governance committee meeting so that we could discuss this among board members since VTrans has proposed this. And so that's what this meeting is for us today, is to talk about the charter potential changes, VTrans proposal, and any proposal that we may want to suggest to VTrans, at least from this committee. And if you're not easily finding the charter, I just added the link right into the chat so you can open it up as we have this discussion. And now I'm going to turn it over to Clayton because I believe you might have some recommendations for us in terms of this conversation.
And so really, I see that there's kind of two items that we need to respond to with VTrans's language, and then one third item that's kind of related that we should also consider. And so, you know, we've met before and talked about various things with the statute that, you know, we're going to want to be amending. And so I don't see this discussion as the overall, hey, here's everything about the statute that, you know, could be improved. I just want us to focus kind of on these three items. And so one of the things that I think that we need to provide a recommendation to the legislature on is the timing. You know, my perception is that VTrans would like to have the statutory language changes made this session. And I can tell you that some of our staff, I think, would appreciate that. We've gotten feedback from some of our rural staff that the uncertainty, you know, is actually a bigger problem than, you know, the certainty of knowing whether they will be transferred or not. So I think that that is certainly one of the benefits of having the language changed here. I think the downside of the changes is that we are still going through our process. And I can tell you that, you know, our board is still, you know, neutral. I met with some of the folks from Tri-Valley Transit yesterday. It seems like they're still, you know, very much, you know, neutral and thinking about it. And my worry is that we would end up changing statute and then finding out that, you know, it may not be necessary if the other agencies decide that, you know, that the transfer does not work for them. There is all of the changes that have been recommended would happen after July 1st of 2026, except for the Stowe seasonal service. That potentially could be transferred in September of 2025. I think that transfer could happen without the statutory language, you know, being amended. I would want to, you know, talk to Ed, our lawyer, and get VTrans's perspective on that. But I believe that if we change the statute in the 2026 session, that there would be no harm to the process, that we would still be able to have the transfers in 2026 if that's where we had to. So that's one area. I want to jump through the three areas for us to discuss, and then we can, you know, circle back. The other area is that VTrans's recommended changes for our area of operation indicate that we will provide service in Chittenden County, but also commuter service in Washington, Franklin, and Grand Isle counties. And so one of the things that I would recommend is that the statute limit us only to Chittenden County operations, and that then we have some type of language that would say that we can operate outside of Chittenden County by going through the state grant application, you know, process, so that if any time in the future, you know, it makes sense for us to jump back into rural, that we would go through that state grant application process. I think that makes sense because, as we've seen with some of our commuter services, like the Middlebury Link, like the Heinsberg commuter, you know, these sometimes it makes sense to transfer these to other providers. And I would not want the statute to appear that we are, you know, sort of obligated to provide this service, which I think some would argue, you know, if the statute said that we, you know, provided commuter service in Washington County. So that's the next area. And then lastly, as you all know, we are working with CCRPC on adjustments to our urban assessments. And I think that there is a good chance that as we come out of that process, that we will want to make some changes to the statute based on, you know, all of this work with the municipalities and getting them sort of on board with a common vision of how assessments, and especially special assessments, you know, should be operated. What I wouldn't want to do is ask them to open up our charter this session, then ask them to open up our charter again next session, especially if it seems like it's not that timely, or there's no harm in delaying. And so those are the three items that I think that we need to weigh in on. so that I can advise the legislature.
Great, thank you for that great summary, Clayton. So I'd like to hear from committee members, your thoughts on Clayton's 3 points, the timing, the particular language about the service area, and the need to make a adjustment later on related to the assessments. Thoughts?
I have some initial thoughts. I think the timing makes what you're saying about the timing makes sense to me, Clayton. I think you know your staff and what would be the most supportive to them, as long as I think we're getting that clear message to them and can resolve any of the uncertainty, that would be helpful. With regard to the area included in the charter, I have some questions as well. I'm looking at it now, and it includes things like providing services to the towns of Orange, Washington, and Williamstown. I don't know that we've ever provided those services. So there's a question there in my mind about, well, what's the real purpose and need of the charter language? And does it come down to how we assess dues with our local municipalities? If we were to limit it to just Chittenden County, and then we're requested to expand service for any reason, would that lead to issues with assessing dues from those communities outside Chittenden County we might be serving?
I think that what we would need to do is include language that we currently have language that talks about assessments in rural. That language would end up being repealed with the VTrans proposal. And what I would suggest is that instead of it being repealed, that we would set up the framework for, if we were ever to go out, to rural again, here is how, we would do assessments. And again, that's probably another reason for us to do these changes next year, because then that will give us an opportunity to work with, I would say we'd want to work with our existing rural communities and find out what makes sense to them. Because if we were to expand back into rural, it would most likely, be with those communities. And so that way we can have something that, because our current, processes on the rural side for local match just, really don't make sense. And
So, I mean, with that in mind, yeah, sorry, I didn't read the whole charter. I just read the area of operation, and now I'm reading the dues portion. With that in mind, then I think as much as we can avoid having to go back to the legislature to determine area of operation, the better. As much as that responsibility can be shifted to VTrans and the board of Green Mountain Transit for future decisions, I think that flexibility is in our favor.
I do think that there's one area that I want to highlight, which is that, part of GMT's history is hearing the pride that, like Chris Cole and others had about Wheels went bankrupt and 2 weeks later we were providing service. And that is really like, that's awesome. But then I also think that, wow, in 2 weeks, we committed ourselves to 2 decades worth of work. And my inner bureaucrat gets worried that, what processes were bypassed and like making that decision. And I kind of like the idea of, no, we couldn't just on a whim, change our mission, and that we would have to go through like the state, grant application process, because then, that process works.
Paul and Amy, what are your thoughts?
I just had a question, either Dan or Clayton. Are any of the other organizations that provide transportation use assessment? The rural areas, do they use any other assessment tool besides what we have been using around here for rural?
I'm going to let Dan answer, because I think that he is more familiar with what the other providers are doing. I'll just say that my perception is that they've come up with some sort of like fair share formulas for how things should be, distributed between municipalities, employers, hospitals, schools, that type of stuff. But I'll let Dan confirm.
Yeah, thanks, Paul, and thanks, Clayton. You are correct, Clayton. We use many agencies use a fair share model, assessing population by service, time, length, ridership. There's a few models out there that exist. But some agencies don't do any of that, and they just assess a flat fee that hasn't changed in years, similar to GMT Rural. So you're not too far off from a few other agencies in the state. The vast majority of them don't collect nearly enough local assessment from the municipalities to cover the local share that VTrans is looking for. And so a statewide look at this is definitely overdue as well. And I appreciate the thoughts on the assessment discussion. I don't think VTrans has been made aware of this yet, so I'll have to bring this to Ross and the timelines that you see as well. And so yeah, thanks.
And
The
just-
assessments, are the assessments all voluntary?
They are. Yeah, GMT is the only municipality that's a transit agency that's a municipality that can assess like you do with the assessment that you provide. Sorry.
For the urban. So yeah,
VTrans.
VTrans, GMT is the only one that has the like taxing authority,
Yes.
which
Thank
is
you, Catherine.
done
Yeah.
through the assessments, because the others are nonprofits versus municipal corporations.
Yeah, the only other caveat is that Marble Valley is a transit district, so so they're not a nonprofit. They are a municipality as well, but
Oh, they are,
don't
okay.
have a taxing authority. They still seek that municipal contribution through town meeting day votes, and
Got
so
it,
it ends
thanks.
up on the municipal ballots. So
Oh, and those other communities, if a community says, no, we're not gonna pay anymore, they still get all the service they got before.
the answer to that is possibly. I wouldn't give that a yes, because we are looking. I don't know. I know we're all in a contraction phase of our transit service. VTrans is as well, and so we are contracting where services are not cost effective. So a municipality that's not paying in will likely not see as much service in the future. So
I think, we could spend hours talking about the fairness of municipal contributions in the rural areas when the transit service benefits the receiving community and the departure communities pay for the shares, but that's not really the point of this meeting. Amy, did you have thoughts about the three issues I'm just looking at, I'm cognizant of the time and knowing Clayton has to jump at 9, the 3 items of timing, service area, and the future assessment changes?
Not hugely different from what folks have already said. I think it makes sense to, the idea of going to the legislature and asking them to open up our charter twice and review and consider changes is hard. I would prefer just to do that once and have it well thought out when we go to that. I think that makes strategically the most sense. And I like the idea of looking at our area of operation and keeping it a little bit vague and give us some flexibility to not be hardwired into those, if we're going to leave rural, to be hardwired into those rural commuters if it doesn't work out appropriately. So I don't have anything new to add. I think that what Clayton said was reasonable and it makes sense.
So if I could summarize the thoughts of the committee in this, it would be preference to wait until next year and do a comprehensive charter update that reflects all of the needs of GMT. If there is some urgent need to make a intermediary charter change to the service area that we don't see, but others may see, then the preference would be that it would be general, that it's Chittenden County plus other rural areas as determined through the VTrans grant process and the board decision-making. And then, but ideally we would wait until next year when we could do a comprehensive update. Did I sum that up from committee members well? All right.
That was good, Catherine.
Clayton, does that give you what you need for right now?
Yes.
Fantastic.
And I especially appreciated your introductory clause that if there's things that we don't see that require us to jump now, then hey, we'll be flexible.
Yep. And we'll be flexible. And I think even my thoughts, even in the long term, like for charter changes next year, keeping the service area flexible in the charter is what makes the most sense, because all of the other transit providers have that flexibility for service area. And so if we want to think about the system as a whole, and we're always trying to make the system as a whole work efficiently and effectively, GMT should have that same flexibility as the other providers in order to ensure we can do that.
I think that makes sense.
Okay.
Hey, we did our mission and we did it in 20 minutes.
Oh, that's impressive.
I'm actually gonna be able to go pee before my next meeting. Oh, wait a second.
Fantastic.
Let's make sure that's not in the minutes, Ash.
Well, it's in the recording, so
Okay.
you can't.
It's
All right.
official.
So the other items that we did have other items on our agenda.
Right.
The first was any public comment. And I don't think we have any members of the public here, but I'm curious if any staff members wanted to weigh in on the discussion we just have, since we have a minute. All right. Hearing none, I'm assuming that you think we're all brilliant and you agree with everything that we said. So the next we have is the approval of the committee minutes from January 31st, 2025. Boy, it's been a while since we met.
I'm happy to move to approve.
Thank you, Amy. Is there a second? Thank you, Christian. All in favor of accepting the minutes from January 31st, please say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? Nay? All right, the ayes
I'm
have it.
not actually on the committee, so I'm not
So you're
Saying yay or
just
nay.
generally in favor of everything we do.
exactly, exactly.
All right, so the next item is commissioner comments.
This is kind of like a round table.
Yeah.
Okay. I'll just share this because I got Clayton on the phone. I had talked about I was going to connect with Montpelier next Wednesday. It looks like it'll be 3 Wednesdays down the road. They bumped me off the council meeting. So that'll be further down. I'll let Monica know.
Thank you so much, Christian.
Great. When is our next meeting scheduled?
I was gonna ask if you all are able to meet again this month, because this is actually our February, meeting that got pushed because of
Yep.
school vacation. Because we're gonna have some rules for you that we'd like you to consider. And
So it'll be March 28th, is that?
It is. Yep.
Okay, thank you.
Yep. I'm in.
Okay, so I am all set to meet the regular time. Everybody else? Yep, great. And thank you all for your flexibility in doing this special meeting. I think it was important to have some board feedback on potential charter changes to support Clayton in his work.
thank you so much, everybody. Good seeing you, Dan. Thanks for joining, and thanks for everybody for joining GMT Wide. I'll see you at 10:30. Bye.
Bye, everybody.
Bye.
Bye.
Bye.